All right. Good day, everyone. And thank you for joining today's Ask Me Anything, where we answer your questions about cannabis legalization in New York. We do this every Wednesday at 4:20 p.m. New York City time. I'd like to welcome back those of you who have joined us before for previous Ask Me Anything sessions. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, I hope you'll make it a regular occurrence. My name is Jeffrey Hoffman, and I am an attorney in New York whose legal practice focuses entirely on cannabis. If you would like to contact me, you can do that either here on LinkedIn. I welcome all connection requests, or you can reach out to me at my email address, which you can see on the screen at the bottom, info@420jurist.com, which I guess you might say makes me the 420 jurist. And as the 420 jurist, I will be answering your questions, roughly half from a list, which I've gotten from previous Ask Me Anything sessions, and roughly half of the questions which you post in the comment thread here today. So if you'd like to ask a question, now is the time to do so. As my usual weekly disclaimer, I need to let everyone know that while I am indeed an attorney, I am not your attorney, at least not yet, except, of course, for the few folks in the audience that I see here today that are indeed clients. Don't worry, I am still your attorney. But for the rest of you, I am not your attorney, and today's event is not legal advice. It does not create an attorney-client relationship, and it is not a solicitation to offer legal advice. And so with that disclaimer out of the way, let's get to some questions. All right, and first we're going to go to a couple of really good questions that I got both in previous sessions as well as a few that came through during the week since last week's session. And the first one is, for people considering locating in New York or New Jersey, do you believe there is an advantage to one state over the other for applicants? So, yes, there are various advantages and disadvantages of each state. I would say for New Jersey, probably the number one advantage is that New Jersey is giving out licenses to folks that weren't already part of any program in the state of New Jersey. So there are many, many licenses being given out in New Jersey. And they are knee deep in that process right now. Here in New York, at this point, we have only given out the conditional cultivation licenses to some folks, somewhere in the mid 200s, and about 25 conditional processing licenses. Now, we are coming to the end of the application period for the first retail license here in New York. That is the conditional adult use retail dispensary license. So we will hopefully be giving out some of those here in the next few months. But the Office of Cannabis Management has made it clear that for the remainder of the standard licenses in the cannabis law, we probably won't see the regs for those until later this year. And it's unlikely that we'll see the licensing process for those licenses until the middle of next year. So the big advantage to New Jersey is that New Jersey is actively giving out licenses and actively, at least attempting, to open more dispensaries. Now, one of the disadvantages of New Jersey is that New Jersey indeed does have a bifurcated approval process. That is, you have to get a license from the state authority, and then you have to go to each local authority where you want to open a dispensary, for example, and get an up and down vote from the locality as well. And that is not how it's going to work in New York. In New York, the only license you will have to get is the license from the state. You will have to go through, or at least you will have to notify the locality if you want to open a dispensary or an on-site consumption lounge. In New York City, the appropriate entity for you to give notice to, and you will probably have to go through that entity to that entity in person and do a presentation, is the community board. And this is a very similar process to what is happening if you apply for a liquor license in New York. You have to notify the community board and go in front of them and present your plans. And then they have the ability to submit a letter with your application, although they do not have an up or down vote as to whether or not you get a license. So just real quick, those are a couple of the advantages and disadvantages of New York and New Jersey. I think if you wanted to open or have a shot at opening something in the very near term, New Jersey is the place you would go through, although it is a pretty involved process. And it is, from what I understand, very challenging to find real estate in New Jersey. But at least New Jersey is in the throes of doing that process, whereas in New York, we're a little bit further behind in the game here. And as you know, the first licenses for the justice-involved individuals, the state is, at least in theory, going to be providing their dispensary locations. Certainly nothing like that going on in New Jersey. But it is going to be a little while longer still before those stores open en masse. And again, that'll be well into 2023 before we see an appreciable number of those stores and before we see anything as far as the licensing for the 9 standard licenses which were in the cannabis law. So depending on what your preferences are, if you want to move quicker, or if you perhaps want to have a process where you don't have to get the approval of 2 different entities, that those types of things will impact which state you may want to get involved with. Mr. Norman, I see that you posted number 267, which references the number of cannabis justice-involved conditional adult use retail dispensary licenses have been submitted, and I'm guessing number 267 might be your license application number, which I'm wondering if you just submitted it recently. I submitted a license yesterday, and we were at 258. So if you just submitted today and you're at 267, that means roughly an additional 11, or I actually, sorry, my math is horrible, roughly an additional 9 since I submitted one for a client yesterday. So that would indicate roughly 9 in 24 hours. It was 20. I actually had another client that submitted his on Monday. Alex, you did yours yesterday, so we were at 267 yesterday. I'm just curious, Alex, when did you post that yesterday? The posting that was 258 for me yesterday was around 2 p.m., sometime between 2 and 2:30. So it'd be good to know when your posting was, and that would give us an idea of how long it took those other 9 to get submitted. All right, we're going to do a couple of questions that have come through in today's session. One is there a listing of the properties already secured for the CARD program? To my knowledge, there is not. And in fact, right before Labor Day, someone from the governor's office came out and said there were no properties yet secured for the program. I don't think that's too much of a freak out yet, as long as DASNY is well into the process of identifying the properties and negotiating with the owners, which I'm guessing they've done with CBRE, the real estate consultancy that they're having them help them in that process. But again, as of Labor Day, there were no properties actually secured. There was some thought that at Monday's CCB meeting, which I was not able to attend because I was working with clients for CARD, that they were going to announce the number of licenses and an update on locations. I have not heard from anyone that I've talked about that was participating in the meeting, that there was any information along those lines. So at least right now, we're going to need to depend on folks like Alex who are willing to tell you their number if they were handling their applications themselves, or I guess attorneys like me that were helping folks when we know what the application number was for the ones that we've submitted, so that we can let you know kind of where we are in numbers. And so like Alex said, he was at 267. If anyone in the chat right now has any other numbers from today, feel free to share them. I have not reached out to any of the people I normally reach out to about numbers today, so I may do that later today and let folks know. But anyway, Alex is the most recent number that I have, which was 267. All right, let's look at another couple of questions. And let's see. I am not coming to the Syracuse Canna Conference on Friday, but I will be at Cannabis Insider's third live event, which I believe is going to be in November, which is going to be a little bit closer to me up in the Hudson Valley. So I will be at that event. So if folks want to meet me there, I'd love to meet you at that event. Again, I think that's coming later in November. All right. Question: will localities have an up or down vote as to whether or not they will allow your dispensary in their locality? No, they will not have an up or down vote. So you will have to notify them. And I believe the notification period is between 30 and 270 days before you apply. And it's going to be very interesting to see how that works out with DASNY, considering I've already given several of my clients have already applied. And of course, they've not given notice to anybody because they don't know where their dispensaries are going to be. So it's going to be very interesting to see how DASNY works through that process with the localities. I do think what they're going to do is say this was just kind of the this process was the right to apply process, and everybody that then applies is going to get a license. So they're going to kind of have a faux process where 30 days before they're going to have that final piece of the puzzle, they'll tell folks, hey, if you happen to, we've approved you to quote unquote apply, and if you do that final application, your spot will be in the Bronx. And so then folks will know, and they will then notify the community board in the Bronx, hey, in 30 days, we're going to apply for a license in the Bronx. And then go before that community board and do all those types of things. And then 30 days later, the CCB will give them a very special application, which will be like, I guess, one question, which is tell us your name, tell us your approved application number, and there you go. And I guess that's how they're going to do some kind of process just to meet the letter of the law as far as having to give notice to these entities 30 to 270 days before you apply. But yes, or I guess, but no, they do not have an up or down vote. You do have to notify them. And then again, like most the liquor licenses work, you typically go before the community board. You give them your plan for what you're going to look to do. And then they have the ability to send the authority over in liquor. It's the state liquor authority here for us in cannabis. It'll be the Cannabis Control Board, and the OCM, the authority in the jurisdiction where you're going to have your store, your on-site consumption lounge, will be able to send the CCB a letter as to whether or not they're in favor of you getting a license, but it is not a dispositive up or down vote. All right. All right. So Keith said Monday morning he was 234. I had somebody submit right before you who was 226. Then again, like we said, I had a client yesterday that was 258. And then shortly after him, Alex was 267. So this gives you some ideas of the numbers. All right. Let's see what other questions we have here today. Are you aware that it is quite difficult or nearly impossible to secure life insurance once licensed in cannabis or working for a cannabis organization? I'm not aware of that as pertains specifically to life insurance. Quite fascinating. Although I don't know if you've reached out, Wayne, to or maybe you are a insurance broker. If you're looking for insurance, I don't know if you've reached out to some folks that are very specific to cannabis insurance. If there are folks here on the call that are really tuned into cannabis insurance and know anything about getting life insurance after you're shown that you're related to cannabis, let Wayne know. But if you're having challenges reaching out to people, just reach out to me separately via LinkedIn, and I'll connect you with some of the insurance folks I know, and we'll see if they have any insights for you. But I am not aware of any specific difficulties related to life insurance once applying for cannabis. I do know that a lot of insurance underwriters are not big fans of cannabis, so it's almost impossible to get through any type of insurance through them. More and more of them are coming on board. There are several that are, I guess we'll call them cannabis friendly. Probably would have some folks that they could help you out getting life insurance. But again, I will connect you with some of my life insurance experts if you need some assistance along those lines. Next question. Getting a lot of good ones in the comments threads today. So next one. What kind of licensing do we need to manufacture edibles and oils in New York State? And the answer is you need a processing license. And you can either get your own processing license, independent processing license, which would allow you to get flower from any licensed flower grower, or you could grow your own flower and then get one processing license to allow you to process the flower that you grew. So your options again there are either your own individual independent processing license, and you could also get a cultivation license, and then a processing license, which will let you process only the cannabis that you grew. And so that's the license you will need to manufacture edibles and oils here in New York. Is smoking permitted at on-site consumption lounges? Excellent question. We will get the answer definitively once we see the regulations for cannabis. Although I will note that they did go to some links in the cannabis law to talk about how the Clean Air Act, as is relevant to cigarettes, will not apply to the on-site consumption lounges. So it does seem like they are indeed setting up a pathway such that the on-site consumption lounges will allow for the purchase and on-site consumption of various cannabis products, and hopefully including smokable products. I know for one that due to a bet that I lost to Wei Hugh, who is an outstanding cannabis lawyer here in New York, I lost a bet to him, and my payment to that bet to him is that I owe him a Gary Payton pre-roll at the very first on-site consumption lounge that opens within close proximity to him and me. We both live here in New York City. So the first on-site consumption lounge that opens in reasonable proximity to me and Wei, he and I will be going there, and I will be buying him a Gary Payton pre-roll, and I hope that I will be watching him consume it there at the on-site consumption lounge. That is our intention. That is the way, based on my read of the law, things are going to play out, and I hope that's what happens. So there you have it. All right, let's go to some more questions. And yes, Shaquana, do not worry. You will 100% be in attendance, but we may require you to buy me a pre-roll. No, I'm kidding. You absolutely can attend. And frankly, everyone that comes to my Ask Me Anythings is welcome. Anyone that likes cannabis in New York is welcome to come see me pay off my bet to weigh Hugh. We'd love to have you. You can all point your fingers at me and laugh. Jeffrey, you're a terrible gambler. How dare you lose so many bets to weigh? But there you have it. So we welcome all of you in attendance. And especially if you want to buy me a pre-roll while I'm buying Way a pre-roll. So anyway, we'll let everyone, don't worry, via my AMA a week or two before I pay Way my debt for that bet, we'll let everyone know when and where it's happening. Okay, let's do some other questions from the backlog. Are the applications rolling? Is there a submission deadline for applicants? When are the deadlines? And yes, the applications, at least one of them right now, is big time rolling. We have until Monday to get in your conditional adult use retail dispensary license applications. Monday is the deadline. So get it in, get it going, be there, be square. I don't think they're going to take your application if it's late. After that, I do not anticipate us seeing any other applications until probably the middle of next year. I don't think there will be any other conditional applications, although it's entirely in the Cannabis Control Board's purview to have there be. Boy, I said that terribly. It's entirely in the Cannabis Control Board's purview to create other conditional licenses, or frankly, any other licenses for that matter. But I, for one, do not anticipate any other ones, which means we won't see any other applications rolling until probably mid next year, when we will hopefully see the applications for the other 9 standard licenses rolling. So we'll keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully that is how things will play out. All right, let's do a few more questions from the backlog, and then we'll wrap it up for today. Actually, our buddy Joe just put in another questions about the CARD application. Do you think there will be another CARD application period? Probably not. If they're already up to over 267 applications, that means they're well over the number of licenses that I think they anticipate handing out. I don't know that all 267 will be viable. I think it's entirely possible that a lot of folks will not have viable applications. I think it's entirely possible some people will not understand the requirement that the conviction and the qualifying business had to be in the same person. I think it's entirely possible some people will not understand that an ACD does not qualify as a conviction. I think there's all kinds of other possibilities there. So it's entirely possible that many of the applications that get submitted are not viable. But I do think they will get enough viable applications for the number of licenses that they're contemplating giving out. And for that reason, I do not think that there will be another application period for that license. THC-infused drinks. All right, let's go to another question from today's session. Where do THC-infused drinks fit in? Only in consumption spots? No, I think THC-infused drinks will be able to be sold from either dispensaries or on-site consumption lounges, or via delivery. So again, we are waiting for the regs, but I've not seen anything in the law that would make it such that THC-infused drinks could not be sold in all 3 of those scenarios: dispensary, on-site consumption, and delivery. Obviously, the devil will be in the details. We need to wait for the Cannabis Control Board to give us the regulations, but there's not been anything that I've seen at this point that would indicate that THC beverages are not going to be allowed to play just like other methods of consuming THC. Now, there may be limitations on how many milligrams of THC in the drink, or how many can be sold in one purchase, but I do believe that in general they will be sold again in all 3 of our retail paradigms. Wayne, I think you're 100% correct. That in consumption lounges, you will only be allowed to consume what you purchase on site. Frankly, I think that will be in the regulations, and I think that will be a hard and fast regulation, that you will not just be able to bring any other cannabis that you have from other places and smoke it there. The one place where I could see that not being the case is I do think part of the idea of the liberal nature of cannabis consumption, the idea that you can consume anywhere you can smoke cigarettes, and just the fact that there are consumption lounges out of the box here in New York. There, the other jurisdictions that are looking to have consumption lounges are basically backfilling. They weren't. This was not necessarily a part of their law from the outset. Here in New York, consumption lounges have been part of the law from the outset, so New York will not be backfilling. Again, the one place where it could be interesting as far as how it works out is with all of the NYCHA housing, particularly that we have here in New York City. So in federally subsidized housing, technically you are not allowed to smoke cannabis in your own home, right? Because it's federal housing, and you're actually at risk of losing your home if you're in NYCHA housing or other federal subsidized housing if you smoke cannabis within your own home. So there could be some interest. So again, the reason why the law as instituted was what do I want to say here? So that folks that live in federally subsidized housing could smoke in public without any concern. There may be something addressed to that extent with the consumption lounges, such that since these folks don't have a place to smoke in their own home, it'll just be interesting to see whether the Cannabis Control Board wants to think about that in the regs. I think Wayne is 100% correct. Due to the insurance issues, it's just going to be interesting to see how New York's going to want to play it out, due to the fact that so many people, particularly in New York City, are not going to be able to smoke cannabis within their own home. And so there you go for that. All right, let's do one more question from the backlog, and then we're going to be done for the day. Where is the list of the approved cannabis testing labs in New York State? And as folks know, or will know after I tell you, all cannabis that's getting grown in the state, the medical that is currently getting grown, the adult use, which is in the process of getting grown, and all of the adult use is going to getting grown in the future, is going to have to be tested by testing labs here in New York to confirm what the THC level is, to confirm that there's nothing wrong with the cannabis, there's no mold, there's no contaminants, that there's nothing wrong with the cannabis that we're going to want to get sold in the state. So right now, these are referred to as the permitted laboratories. It's always fascinating to me in regulated paradigms what they call the permit and what they call the license, which is more important and which is not. So, for example, in another regulated market that I know quite a bit about, that is the mobile vending market here in New York City. And again, just as a reminder for everyone, all of the weed trucks and carts that got seized over the last month here in New York City that had nothing to do with cannabis. Well, I mean, nothing to do as far as how they justified seizing the trucks, and everything to do with the facts that none of those trucks and carts had the mobile vending permit that you need to vend from a mobile unit at the curb or on the sidewalk here in New York City. So in that regulated paradigm, it's the permit which is very important, the most important thing to the paradigm, and the license in mobile vending here in New York City, anyone can get as long as they go and take the course for it from the Department of Health. So in that paradigm, it's the permit that's very important that no one can get, and it's the license which anyone can get and is less important. You still have to have the license to work on one of the trucks or on one of the carts, but again, anyone can get one of the licenses. It's the permit that's impossible to get. Here in cannabis, it is the license, which allows you to grow cannabis or sell cannabis. And it's going to be the permit, which is for the ancillary services like the laboratory. So they are permitted laboratories here in New York. There are currently 4 permitted laboratories: ACT Laboratories, which is in Ballston Spa; Lexichrome Analytical Laboratory, which is in Freeport; Phytopharma Labs, which is in Warwick; and Talon Analytical, which is Garden City Park. So, and Alex, you are correct. I don't know that they're just going to be straight up granted conditionals. I do still think they may have to go through a small application process like the hemp folks did for conditional processing and conditional cultivating. Although if somebody knows otherwise, please drop that in the thread. But yes, the hemp folks are going to be able to test for adult use. That is my understanding as well. But again, where that list is found of the 4 that I listed, that is found on the OCM website. There's a special section called Permitted Laboratories, and that's where you can find the info there. All right. 4:51, so we're a little over, so we're going to call it for the day. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. As you know, we do this every Wednesday at 4:20 p.m., so we'd like everyone to be a regular. If you're not connected to me on LinkedIn, please reach out. I accept all connection requests. And as you know, as excited as I am about the fact that we're going to have a regulated cannabis industry here, not too much longer now, the most important thing that happened in the cannabis law is the fact that no one else is getting arrested and incarcerated for cannabis, and we're expunging all the low-level cannabis crimes automatically and expunging the higher-level cannabis crimes through 440 motions. A lot of them are getting opposed by DAs, and we need to fight that all over the state. The intent of the legislature was to hit a reset button here. And even though they didn't automatically expunge the higher level cannabis crimes, it is their intent that we go through a process to get that done. And we're going to get it done. So the justice issues were the most important things. If you have any questions about those things, go to newyorkjustice.org, where we have a bunch of information. And if you need help because you need help with a 440 motion to get expungement, or if you know folks that are incarcerated for nonviolent cannabis offenses, we want to know about it. So go to newyorkjustice.org and let us know either your questions or about folks that you know of that need help. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you next week.